Hebron when the 3 Israeli settler children were kidnapped. I find it very brave of you, the fact that you went as far as to talk about were they kidnapped, or you said it in a way.
Did he make the excuse or find the excuse?
Yes, did he make an excuse or did he find an excuse?
Yeah.
It certainly felt to me so bizarre that happened at the point when this negotiation of a unity government was just at the same time happening. So those of us there found it easy to make certain connections. And when we came back, when I made something like that in discussions, people said I'm paranoid, or I have a conspiratorial sense of the world and politics. How have you dealt with some of what you've seen and the reaction? Because that's a toughie. And for example, I wanted to start at Hunter, I'm a professor, and I want to start a CUNY Center on Palestinian Studies. And the blowback at this school has been fascinating to look at. How do you deal with some of the blowback there?
Well, in terms of blowback, the first thing is I'm very lucky because I don't get employed by any of these institutions, so I'm sort of a free spirit. But the resistance that I get, there are several different kinds of resistance. There's some resistance from sort of liberal Jews who really don't want to believe this. I mean, and the way that I try to understand this is I think of my mother. My mother, lived through the Holocaust. She was in the U.S., but her emotions were there, and she wrote all about the Holocaust. She was an author, and she loved the state of Israel. I mean, this was going to be this fabulous place. And so, watching her, go back and forth and write there and really be part of that country. And then having a daughter who does what I do, and having her sort of realize that I'm not making this stuff up, that this is actually going on, I watched her heart break. And so for many, many people, particularly Jews who were very involved in sort of the myth of Israel, coming to terms with this is an emotional heartbreak. They have to give up a dream that they realized they were duped. And so that's sort of like doing family therapy, I mean, I've done presentations at temples where people sat around and wept because they were confronting the fact that what they had thought was going on wasn't going on. So that's a kind of response that you can really work with, because people are listening and they're open and they know that you're bearing witness to what you say. You don't make this stuff up, okay? So that's stuff you can work with. You can help people move on. You can address the pain that they're feeling and blah, blah, blah. The kind of pushback that's really hard to deal with is the people who say that you're lying, which, I've had, do you know what a shaliach is?
Yeah, an emissary.
Yeah, it's an ambassador from Israel. They're usually fresh out of the army. They're usually smart and attractive young people, and they get hired for 1 to 3 years by Hillels, temples, Jewish groups, Jewish magazines, and so I've run into a few of these I don't know what the shlichim. Thank you. And the most recent one that I ran into, after I gave a talk, it just came up and started screaming at me and calling me a liar, and she was really kind of out of control, and all the Hillel kids were sort of standing behind her like, see, she knows she's Israeli. And I sort of was very calm because I absolutely will not rise to the level of hysteria of that kind of approach. So she's screaming at me and calling me a liar and saying Hamas did this and blah, blah, blah. And finally I said, we're just going to have to agree to disagree because, she's not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change her mind. And she refused to agree to disagree. And I thought, this is a level that we're not going to have any problem. But it was sort of like a caricature of the Israeli. I felt like, honey, you're not doing your country any good by being so ludicrously ridiculous, So that kind of person, you just got to back off and say, there's not much we can talk about, Sometimes I talk to Christian groups that have been so involved with building relations with temples, that are sort of involved with Holy Land tours, that really have a whole different other mythology about Israel. And for them, it's easier to get through to what the realities are, but it's another form of heartbreak. So, I get hit with rage, I get hit with pain, I get hit with fear. We have a lot of conversations about how, basically I feel like the way the Israeli state functions is really a danger to Jews, and not only to Palestinians but also to Jews, and that we need to really think about what does Zionism mean? Was it a good idea? And let's look at what's happened. That really triggers a lot of people who they get to a place and then they just have sort of a primordial existential fear, which I think is part of the Jewish PTSD, post-Holocaust PTSD, that we as a culture need to work on. So there's a lot of different kinds of pushbacks that I see. I don't know if other people have experience.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I feel like with some people it's completely pointless. I come from a Soviet Jewish background. My father played a very active role in the refusement movement after having dealt with
in the USSR.
Yeah, after having dealt with the enduring anti-Semitism there, and basically he's just completely far right, like absolutely nuts, and I feel like there's absolutely no way to change him after what he's been through. So I pretty much just stay clear of those conversations. I'm just like, okay.
But can I give you a little response? I agree that if someone is so traumatized and so set in their ways and whatever, that it's not worth having a big blow-up fight with them because you're not going to get anywhere. But for me, the important thing is that you are not in that position. So I think that a lot of children of people who are very traumatized and have had major those kind of experiences can have children that can be more open-minded and more sensitive and more tuned in, and that's really how things are going to change because your father's not going to change. And so that's the inspiration for me, is that you're here. So, did you have another thing?
No, not
okay.
I
Yes.
just wanted to share something that happened when we were there. I was with a group of academics and professors and filmmakers, and 3 are African Americans. One was Egyptian, and somebody was Latino. The African Americans were pulled off the bus during checkpoints regularly.
Yeah, that happens on our bus too.
And I think it's important that we understand that racial profiling, stop and frisk, as what we fight against here, are very, very active, and it's entrenched in terms of the Israeli occupation.
And one of the ways that the occupation is not something that's like in some far-off weird little country, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of this, is that a lot of our police or their leadership is being trained in Israel. And that's incredibly worrisome because they're not being trained to protect us. They're being trained in some military tactics. And the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that these training programs are funded by Jewish groups. They're funded by the ADL. They're funded by a group called GENZA. I don't remember what it stands for, but if you look, I just one day I thought, I wonder what that's about. So I Googled, American police trained in Israel, and the most amazing stuff came up. And I do recommend people do that. And the funding is from these right-wing Jewish groups, and that's like incredibly disturbing to me. And then you throw in our military, which has all this excess tanks that they're giving to our police departments, and we're seeing the militarization of our police, and that's going to come and bite us. Because if your police are behaving like an army, then we're all occupied. You can be a white person.
So you said there's racism